I sort of went back and forth about whether to even do this story because there is so much resistance now to any Russia related news. Either you already understand what happened or you've totally bought into the witch hunt conspiracy theory type stuff. So I really was unsure about whether to even talk about this. But in the end, this is actually really big news, and I decided it was an important story to do. The Senate Intelligence Committee, which is controlled by Republicans, in a new report has found that the Kremlin directed Russia's social media meddling in the 2016 election, period. And it's becoming, or it should be, a post-partisan issue. The Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee has a long list of recommendations for Congress and for Donald Trump and for social media companies to prevent the same thing from happening in 2020. But we've already seen Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell block every single effort to prevent 2020 meddling. So it's going to be an uphill battle. The report suggests that social media companies add transparency to the sources of political advertisements on their platforms, that they notify users about exposure to misinformation. And hilariously in a depressing sense, the panel report recommends that the Trump administration remind voters about the dangers of foreign interference in 2020. I laughed out loud when I read that. How quaint, right? The Trump administration should really warn people they benefit from it. They have no interest in stopping it. Why on earth would they warn people? This is the whole problem that we're dealing with. Many of the techniques and the players that are mentioned in the report were already known to us. They talk about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency. They were a big player. They talk about one strategy that we knew about, which was to target Black Americans, particularly in parts of the country like Baltimore and Ferguson, Missouri, which were experiencing racial unrest, and specifically target those areas, Black voters in those areas, to foment more racial unrest. The real news here is not any of that. We knew all of that stuff. The news is that we've learned that the Kremlin itself was directing it. And that conclusion was reached not by, whoever Trump claims it was reached by. It was reached by a bipartisan panel that is led and controlled by Republicans, not a partisan Democratic hack job or whatever Donald Trump will obviously claim. Now, let's do the normal disclaimers here, because I think that this is where maybe some on the left start to I don't know about push back, but they start to question this entire story, which is extraordinarily well backed by evidence. Russia does not only meddle in our elections, right? So when we talk about Russian meddling in our elections, I'm not asserting nor implying, nor have I heard anyone assert or imply that Russia only meddles in American elections. They meddle in others too. And in fact, that's what makes us so sure that it's happening, that it is not atypical for Russia to be meddling in others' elections. The difference is other countries seem more committed in stopping them. Other countries seem more interested in preventing it from happening. Now, let's go to the next disclaimer. Or it's not even really a disclaimer, it's just context. The United States also has a long history of meddling in other elections. And you will sometimes hear people on the left, sometimes the Leninist left, say, who are we to say anything? We've been meddling in elections for a really long time. Yeah, okay. So countries try to meddle in the elections of other countries for their own benefit. That doesn't change anything about wanting to stop Russia from doing it, right? And wanting to stop Russia from doing it specifically for the benefit of Donald Trump. I was reminded when reading about this of the words of a great modern philosopher, Donald J. Trump, who once said, he said it quite recently, in fact, you know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart with treason? We used to handle it a little bit differently than we do now. Very interesting words on such an occasion. If you were Vladimir Putin on the day after the November of 2016 election, how do you prevent death from uncontrollable laughter when you see that it worked, when you see that you succeeded? Listen, I don't know every instance of Russian meddling in foreign elections over the last 100 years, so I can't say with certitude, but has there been any greater accomplishment by Russian meddling in foreign elections than the election of Donald Trump? I'm asking the question. If somebody has an example that is more egregious or notable or whatever, I want to hear it from you. And I hope that at a certain point, because I know that, listen, just every story I do is a balance. There's a risk and a reward to every story that I choose, or just stories that I choose to exclude from the show. I know enough to know that there is a non-zero part of my audience, my core audience even, that believes the witch hunt, never nothing, nothing there. We're actually the bad guys meddling elsewhere, and Russia didn't do anything to us. Conspiracy theory, because that's actually the real conspiracy theory. I know that there are people in my audience who have fallen for that. Try to separate your reflexive reaction that has been built up over the last 2.5 years, often on very bad reporting, and just understand that this is a bipartisan, Republican-led report that has found this. If you want to argue that they had bad data and thus their conclusions are wrong, make that argument, but make it with data. Don't just call it a witch hunt. Don't fall for the Republican talking points, because one of the ways people may not even understand this, and this is a real problem. One of the ways that the right wins is when they convince the left to adopt their talking points. When we start making the same stupid arguments that they make, using the same language, particularly when they're wrong, of course, we lose hard, because we completely lose any ability to see common sense and reason and rationality. So that's my request. Don't fall for that. This weekend, we are having a membership blowout. It's been like a year or longer since we've done this. Membership is available year round, and it's our number one funding source. This weekend, we are going to have a one-day membership blowout, our biggest membership drive of the year. The only one we've done this year, actually, which by definition makes it the biggest. We are going to do a single day massive discount off of memberships. You can sign up at a major discount if you so choose. All you have to do is get on our newsletter. Our newsletter subscribers will get an email this weekend. The subject will be something like that email you've been waiting for, or that discount code I've been telling you about, and it will give you the instructions to take advantage of this bigly. I mean, this is just huge, huge membership discount. So get on our newsletter at davidpakman.com. While you're doing stuff, follow me on Twitter at dpakman. Follow the show on Twitter at David Pakman Show. And a lot of people asking me on Twitter over the last day or two, will I be streaming next week's Democratic debate? And I don't know if people are asking me that because of my recent appendectomy and I've not been streaming, or because of the copyright issues we've had with debates on CNN before. My goal is to be streaming the debate next week, and I will have more information about where that will be happening early next week. Quick break, big Friday show for you today. Due cappucci, per favore. Grazie mille. One of our sponsors making the David Pakman Show possible is Babbel, the language learning app, and you'll get 25% off a subscription to Babbel when you click the link under this video. Babbel was founded in 2007 and now has over 1 million paying subscribers worldwide as one of the world's leading language learning apps. Their learning method has been examined numerous times in scientific studies, including one at Yale in 2019, which found that 100% of participants who used Babbel were able to improve their oral proficiency with a new language within just 3 months. Research found that users learning Spanish on Babbel only needed to use the app for an average of 15 hours over a 2-month period to cover the requirements for 1 college semester of Spanish. I recently went to Italy and used Babbel to brush up on my Italian for a few weeks leading up to the trip. And I was actually surprised at how much I was able to absorb in such a short amount of time. After practicing Italian on the Babbel app, I was able to hold some conversations with locals in Italy. I could understand a lot more of the Italian that I was hearing. And the progress I made was extremely inspiring in keeping me going and continuing to use the app to get even better. I'm also about to use the app to start learning German, which I'm looking forward to. I really would recommend Babbel to anyone who watches our show, and you can save 25% on a subscription to Babbel when you click the link right underneath this video.